He once told me I was too emotional. He said it like it was an insult, like the way I felt was something to be fixed, and maybe for a long time I believed him. I tried to be quieter, calmer, smaller. I tried to love like it didn't hurt. But the truth? Love always hurts if it's real. I still remember the night we met. The sky was silver with rain, the kind that makes the city smell like wet concrete and fading perfume. I was sitting in a cafe I'd never been to before, one of those quiet corners you find when you're trying to disappear. He walked in like he already belonged there, tall, confident, not trying too hard, but knowing people would notice. When his eyes met mine, it wasn't fireworks, it was quiet recognition. Like two people who'd been carrying the same kind of loneliness. He smiled. I smiled back. That's how most stories begin, quietly, almost carelessly. He asked if he could sit at my table because the others were full. They weren't, but I didn't tell him that. We talked about nothing and everything, music, work, dreams, how both of us hated small talk, but were good at pretending. He made me laugh without trying. He made the world outside the cafe disappear. When he left, he said, "You feel a lot, don't you?" It wasn't a question, more like an observation. I didn't know what he meant then. Now, I think he saw something in me. He knew he could use Dot. We started seeing each other more. Morning texts, late night calls. That stage of love where everything feels possible, where you still believe you're safe. He was gentle at first. He'd notice when I changed my hair, when I skipped a meal, when my voice got quiet after a long day. He made me feel seen, and that was all I ever wanted. But slowly, things began to shift, not all at once, but in ways only someone emotional enough would notice. He stopped looking at me when I spoke. He'd sigh when I cried over small things, like sad movies or forgotten birthdays. He'd say, "You make everything too heavy." And I'd apologize. Every single time, I started believing that maybe love was supposed to feel like restraint, like holding your breath so the other person could breathe easier. One night, after an argument that wasn't really an argument, just silence stretched too far, he said something that stayed in my chest for months. He said, "You need to control yourself. Lena, not every feeling deserves attention." I remember standing there, blinking, wondering how he could sound so calm while breaking me in half. He didn't shout. He never did. He just said things in a way that made you question your own reflection. And I loved him so much that I believed he was right. That's the thing about love. When you care too deeply, you start confusing pain for passion. Months passed. He got busier, or maybe just quieter. The messages got shorter. The "I love yous" became habits, not truths. I began collecting small signs of distance, like evidence in a crime I didn't want to solve. He started saying I was dramatic, that I overthought things, that my emotions were exhausting, and I told myself maybe I was. Because when you love someone who doesn't feel as much as you do, you start shrinking your feelings just to fit inside their silence. But here's the cruel part. The more I tried to be less, the more invisible I became. I remember one evening, we were having dinner at his apartment. He was talking about work, scrolling through his phone between bites. I told him I'd had a bad day, that I felt like I was fading. He looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "You always feel like something, don't you?" Then he went back to his phone. That was the moment I realized love could sound like mockery. I wanted to scream, but instead I just nodded, because I thought silence would make him stay, but silence never saves love. It just buries it. Slowly, I used to cry in the bathroom so he wouldn't see me. Not because I didn't want to be vulnerable, but because I didn't want to give him another reason to call me too emotional. I started journaling instead. Pages filled with everything I couldn't say out loud. At first, it was just words. Then memories. Then apologies. I found myself writing, "I'm sorry I feel too much," over and over, like it was my fault for being human. Then one day, I woke up and realized he hadn't texted me in 2 days. Not a good morning, not a busy at work. Nothing. So I called him. It rang twice before he answered, sounding tired. "Hey," I said softly. He sighed. "Lena, I'm just tired, okay? Can we not do this today?" "Do what?" I asked. "This," he said. "The feelings, the check-ins, the intensity. I just need space." Space. That word echoed like a door closing. I whispered, "Okay." Because what else do you say when the person you love starts pulling away like you're a weight they can't carry? That night, I couldn't sleep. So I went through our old messages, the ones that used to make me smile. And as I scrolled, I realized something that broke me in the quietest way. The more he fell out of love, the more polite his words became. "Good night." Love turned into sleep well. "Miss you" became "hope you're okay." Love was disappearing between the lines, and I was the only one reading it. I remember writing in my journal that night, "Maybe I'm too emotional, but maybe that's what made my love real." I closed the book, turned off my phone, and stared into the darkness, a silence that finally felt honest. The next morning, I tried to act normal, made coffee, answered emails, played music in the background so the silence wouldn't swallow me, but everything reminded me of him. The cup he used when he stayed over, the half-empty jar of his favorite jam in my fridge, the playlist we made together, now just noise I couldn't bear to hear. He used to say love was simple, but nothing about this felt simple anymore. It felt like walking on glass, careful not to bleed too. Much where he could see. 3 days passed before he texted again. "Sorry, been busy. Hope you're good." I stared at that message for a long time. Just 5 words that used to mean everything and now meant nothing. I typed, deleted, retyped. Finally, I just replied, "I'm okay. Take care." He didn't answer after that. And for the first time, I didn't wait. Weeks went by. I still saw his shadow in small things, the smell of his cologne on my scarf, his laugh echoing in a stranger's voice. Grief isn't just for people who die. Sometimes it's for people who are still alive, but no longer know how to love you. One Sunday, I went to that same cafe where we first met. It felt smaller now, quieter. Or maybe I was just more aware of the silence. The barista recognized me and asked if I wanted our usual. I smiled weakly and said yes. Though our meant nothing anymore, I sat by the window, watching rain trace lines down the glass. Then my phone buzzed out his name. For a second, my heart forgot everything it had learned. I answered. "Hey," he said softly. His voice sounded tired but familiar, the kind of tired that made you want to forgive too easily. "How have you been?" he asked. I laughed under my breath. "You really want to know?" He hesitated. "Yeah, of course I do. Then why'd you stop asking?" Silence. Just his breathing on the other end. "Lena," he finally said, "I just needed time. You know how you get sometimes? It's a lot." There it was again. That word, a lot. "I loved you," I whispered. "I still do, maybe. But I don't think you ever understood what that meant for me." He said nothing. And somehow that silence told me everything. After that call, something inside me began to shift. I stopped checking my phone, stopped rereading old text, stopped apologizing to my own reflection. Instead, I started noticing myself again, the books I never finished, the recipes I wanted to try, the parts of me I'd left behind while loving him. But healing isn't linear. There were nights I still cried, not because I wanted him back, but because I missed the version of me who believed his love was enough. One night, I got a message from a mutual friend. "Hey, just so you know, he's seeing someone." My stomach dropped, but not for the reason I expected. It wasn't jealousy, it was clarity. Because suddenly it all made sense: the distance, the coldness, the quiet exits. He had already moved on before I ever realized we were ending. I stared at the message, numb. Then, for the first time in months, I didn't cry. I just whispered to myself, "So, this is what peace feels like, the kind that hurts before it heals." The next morning, I opened my journal again. I flipped through all the pages of sadness, confusion, self-blame, and on a fresh page, I wrote, "Today, I forgive myself for being too emotional." Because my emotions were real, and he was not. A few days later, he called again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity is a stubborn thing. "Hey," he said quietly, "can we talk?" His voice had that careful softness, the one people use when they know they lost their hold on you. "I don't think there's anything left to say," I replied. "Lena, I miss you." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was too late. "You miss how I made you feel," I said. "You don't miss me. You miss the way I cared when you couldn't." He went silent, then said, "You've changed." "I had to," I whispered. "You told me I was too emotional, remember?" He sighed. "Yeah, maybe I did. Now," I said softly, "I stopped caring." "Isn't that what you wanted?" There was a long pause. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I never thought you'd actually stop loving me." And that's when I realized he didn't want my love. He wanted my need. The way I used to beg for scraps of attention. The way I made him feel powerful. He wanted control, not connection. "I did love you," I said. "More than I should have. But you taught me something important." "What's that?" He asked. "That loving someone who's afraid of emotions is like trying to fill a well with rain that never comes." He didn't reply, just breathed softly on the other end, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. And then, almost gently, I said, "Goodbye, Aaron." When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even feel angry. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like freedom. That night, I stepped out onto my balcony. The city lights flickered below, small, trembling, alive. For the first time in forever, I felt something beautiful inside the emptiness. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. It was relief. Because when I stopped caring about proving my worth to someone who never saw it, I finally started seeing it myself. It's strange the way endings don't come all at once. Sometimes they arrive slowly, in pieces, disguised as small moments you almost overlook. A familiar song that no longer hurts. A dream where he doesn't appear. A morning when you forget to check your phone and realize you didn't need to. That's how it was for me. Healing didn't happen in a rush. It unfolded quietly, like dawn, soft, hesitant, and a little afraid to shine. 2 months passed since the last call. I didn't block his number. I didn't delete our photos. I just stopped looking. One afternoon, while cleaning my room, I found the old notebook, the one I used to write in when I couldn't speak. The first page still had his name written across the top. Under it, "You said I was too emotional, but that's how I know I'm alive." I smiled, not sadly, but with the kind of acceptance that comes when the storm has already passed. That evening, I met with an old friend, Maya. We hadn't seen each other in months. As we sat in that same cafe, sipping coffee that was too sweet, she asked, "So, how are you really?" I hesitated, because "I'm fine" was a lie I'd told too often. "I'm learning," I said. "Learning what?" "That not everyone deserves to hear my heartbreak." She smiled softly, eyes warm. "I always told you your feelings were your strength, not your weakness." I nodded. I just needed to lose myself to believe that. After she left, I stayed a while longer. The rain began again, soft and steady. like background music to closure. That's when I saw him, across the street, standing under a half-broken streetlight, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense, like he didn't know whether to come closer or disappear. My heart didn't race this time. It just acknowledged him like a memory passing by. He crossed the street slowly, stopped near the cafe door. For a second, it felt like time folded, like the universe wanted one last scene before fading to black. "Hey," he said. His voice still had that quiet control, the one that used to undo me. "Hey," I replied. He looked at me for a long time, like searching for something familiar, then said, "You look different." "I am," I said. He nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about you." I smiled faintly. "That's new," he sighed, looking down. "I didn't handle things right. I know that now." "Why now?" I asked softly. He hesitated. "She left." I tilted my head. "The new girl?" He nodded. Said I was too distant, too cold. There it was, the irony of it all. I whispered, "Maybe you finally met yourself." He winced slightly, like my words landed where he didn't want them to. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of rain hitting glass stop, and he said, "I missed the way you cared, Lena." I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I saw him not as the man I loved, but as the man who never could. "I used to think that was love," I said, pouring everything into someone until I had nothing left. But now I know that wasn't love. That was loneliness wearing patience. He swallowed hard, eyes glassy. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I know," I said gently. "You just didn't mean to love me either." He opened his mouth to say something, but I shook my head, not in anger, just quiet understanding. "You said I was too emotional," I continued, "and for a long time I believed you. So I tried to feel less, cry less, speak less. But all that did was make me disappear." He looked down, ashamed. "Lena, please, no," I interrupted softly. "You don't need to explain, because if I'm honest, I don't hate you. You were just the lesson I needed to learn what I deserve." A silence stretched between us, the kind that no longer hurts, just exists. He finally whispered, "So this is it?" I smiled sadly. "It's always been it, Aaron. We just kept pretending it wasn't." He nodded, eyes shining. "Take care of yourself," he said. "You too." And with that, he turned away, not dramatically, not painfully, just quietly. The same way he'd always left, but this time, I didn't watch him go. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, like something had finally been washed away. I stood there, letting the cool wind touch my face, and for the first time, I didn't feel heavy. I felt holed up. Later that night, I went home and opened my journal again. On the last page I wrote, "He said I was too emotional." But it was my emotion that taught me how to love deeply, how to survive loss, and how to begin again. I stopped caring about being too much and started loving myself enough. It's funny when people say you're too emotional. What they really mean is you make them feel something they can't handle, but emotions aren't the enemy. They're proof that you lived, that you tried, that you gave your heart honestly, even when it wasn't returned. So now, I wasn't too emotional. I was just loving the wrong person with the right heart. Now, when I look back, I don't see him anymore. I see me, standing on that balcony under city lights, finally realizing that silence doesn't mean peace, unless it comes after acceptance. And if he ever wonders why I stopped caring, I hope he understands I didn't stop because I felt nothing. I stopped because I finally learned the difference between feeling everything and losing myself trying to be loved for it. He said I was too emotional until I stopped caring. And that's when he finally started to. It's been 6 months since the last time I saw him. Sometimes I still wake up expecting his name to flash on my screen, but it never does. And that's okay. because somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for closure from him and started finding it within myself. In the beginning, I felt love was about giving everything you had, about staying when things got hard, about proving your worth to someone who didn't know how to see it. But love, real love, doesn't demand you disappear. It doesn't ask you to hide your emotions like there's something shameful. It holds you when you cry. It listens when you tremble. It doesn't flinch when you're honest. I learned that too late with him. But right on time for myself. There are still traces of him everywhere, in the scent of rain, and songs I can't skip, in the way I sometimes look for his face in crowds. But they don't hurt like they used to. They've become gentle reminders, not of what I lost, but of what I found after him. Because losing him didn't destroy me. It stripped me down to the truth. I am emotional. I am sensitive. I am intense, unpredictable, sometimes too much, but all of that means I'm alive. People like me, people who feel deeply, we don't fall in love halfway. We don't hold back. We dive in. We give everything. And that's not weakness. That's courage, because loving with your whole heart, even when it breaks you, means you lived with honesty. And I'd rather be broken for being real than be safe pretending to be numb. Sometimes I reread that last page in my journal, the one I wrote after the rain stopped. It says, "You are not too emotional. You are the storm that reminds the world what feeling looks like." And every time I read it, I smile, because it feels like a love letter to the woman I finally became. A few weeks ago, I got an email from him, short, apologetic, predictable. He said he was sorry, that he'd been thinking about us, that he finally understood what he'd lost. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because some stories don't need sequels. Some chapters close because we outgrow the version of ourselves that kept them open. People often ask me, would you take him back if he came back different? And I tell them no, because I'm different now. I no longer crave the kind of love that needs to be explained. I no longer romanticize being misunderstood. And I no longer see my emotions as flaws that need fixing. I see them as the map that led me home to myself. I still remember how it felt to love him. The late night conversations, the shared silences, the way he made the world seem smaller when he was near. And sometimes I miss that version of us, but I also remember how it felt to shrink, to walk on eggshells around his indifference, to apologize for existing too loudly, and that memory keeps me free. There's a quote I wrote once in the margins of my notebook. Maybe I was never too emotional. Maybe he was just too afraid to feel. That line has followed me since, because it's true. Some people are terrified of emotions they can't control. They mistake depth for drama, honesty for chaos, love for neediness. But the truth is, emotions are what make love human. They're the heartbeat of every connection worth keeping. And if someone calls you too emotional, it only means you're capable of feeling what they've forgotten how to. These days, my life is quieter but not empty. There's laughter again. There are mornings when sunlight feels like a promise instead of a reminder. There are people who ask, "How are you?" and actually wait for the answer. I still feel everything: joy, grief, love, fear. But now I let them all sit beside me. Because emotions aren't enemies to be silenced. They're stories waiting to be heard. Sometimes I imagine seeing him again, not in some dramatic encounter, but maybe years from now in a bookstore or a quiet street. He'll smile politely. I'll smile back, and in that brief silent exchange, he'll finally understand what he couldn't back then, that the woman he once called too emotional was simply too alive for the kind of love he offered. So if you're listening to this and someone ever makes you feel like you're too much, remember, you are not too much. They are just not enough to meet you there. Don't shrink yourself to fit inside their comfort zone. Don't dim your fire because they fear its warmth. Be emotional. Be intense. Be all the things they told you to hide. Because somewhere, someday, someone will see you, and instead of calling you too emotional, they'll say, I've never met someone who feels so beautifully. And when that day comes, you'll look back at every tear, every goodbye, every night you thought you'd never heal, and you'll understand it was all leading you here. To peace, to power, to love that doesn't ask you to mute your soul. So no, I wasn't too emotional. I was just a woman who loved deeply, hurt honestly, and learned beautifully. And now, I don't apologize for it. Not anymore. He said I was too emotional until I stopped caring. And when I did, I found myself again. The girl who once begged to be understood became the woman who no longer needed to be.